clicker training. Several years ago, clicker training hit the dog training scene, and it is still an extremely popular way of training dogs right up to this present day. So what is clicker training? Well, I could go into lengthy explanations and very technical terms, but I will leave that up to you to look at Google or read the books. Basically, what it means is that you use a clicker to mark a behavior that the dog has done, and then it gets a reward for doing that behavior. But let's get to basics. What is a clicker? At my age, I remember back when I was much younger, we had very fancy Christmas crackers. And in those Christmas crackers, there was a metal object. And this metal object was in the shape of an animal. It had two pieces of metal, and when you pushed them towards each other, they made a click sound. That was a clicker in the shape of an animal object. Sadly, crackers are not as fancy as that these days. So these days you can get several kinds of clickers. Here is the box clicker. We call it the box clicker because it looks like a little box. You click it and it gives the click sound. The one clicker that I personally like is what we call the button clicker. To me it has a much softer click and I prefer that one. I also have a handle on my clicker. This is the one that I use daily, so that it can fit on my wrist and I can use it to give the click and then release it. Another clicker that you can get these days is one on a target stick. You use that little point to get the dog to touch it or to move, and you give the click on the target stick. Another very fancy one that I got overseas is this long target stick. Now this long one, it's got a bobble at the end, and you want the dog to touch the bobble or to follow the bobble around. The dog does what you've asked it. You then give a click on the edge here, and then you pull this little lever and it opens up to deliver a treat to the dog. Very fancy and very nice, so that you click and the treat comes out of the bobble. You can get other kinds of clickers too. There are round ones, there's ones with different levels of tones of click. You just have to look around. Most pet stores or online, you can get a clicker anywhere these days. So now you've got the clicker, you need to get the dog used to the click. And this is done by, the way I do it, is I make a pattern of some food on the floor. As the dog goes up to each piece of treat, I give a click. As the dog is going to eat that treat, it gets a click, and it learns that click means I get a treat. Dogs learn this very quickly. So then you start using the clicker. You want to teach it something, so now you will have the dog going to do it. Say you want to teach a sit. Now this is where you can have two kinds of teaching using the clicker. You can have a treat in your hand and you bring it up behind the dog's head. It sort of goes into the sit, you click, it gets the treat. That we call luring, where you're bringing the dog into the position, it gets the click and it gets the treat. That is the quickest way to teach dogs how to get into a position. You help them into the position using the treat, and then they get the click, and then they get the reward. Same thing with the down. You can take the treat, bring it down in front of the dog's face. The dog follows the treat down, gets into the position, click, and it gets the treat. That is a kind of alluring, and that works. But of course, you have to learn that you can't always continue to lure the dog into position and click all the time. I did mention that before. You can't keep having to give treats for a position like a sit or a down after the dog has learnt it years ago. Another way of using the clicker is to sort of wait until a dog is doing something, and when it performs that behavior, click and reward. And then my favorite is free shaping, where you're getting the dog to use its brains. My one dog absolutely adores this. This is where you use the clicker to tell the dog, yes, you're getting it right, you're approaching it, that's looking good. And then the dog learns, I'm thinking about what's happening, and finally the dog performs the behavior. A favorite one is to get a dog perhaps to put its head in a vase or a big bowl. You put the bowl down, the dog is intrigued, it's at a distance, the dog walks towards the bowl, click, gets a reward. Dog starts knowing, that bowl means something. Then the dog goes back towards the bowl, click, reward. Eventually the dog learns, okay, that's it, definitely the bowl, I'm going towards it. When it gets there, it's now getting clicked for being there. And then eventually the dog starts getting more adventurous, perhaps puts its head in to see what's in the bowl, click, reward, click, reward. The dog learns, you're asking me to put your head in that bowl. That's just a very basic one to tell you. But free shaping is such fun. But you cannot do it with the dog until they have the idea of what this is all about. So there is such potential with clicker training. And I love it. And I do it with my dogs, as I've said before. But unfortunately, it's become such a buzzword with everybody. It's like, I do clicker training. Great. But are you doing it correctly? Because it's all very well standing in front of the class and saying, you click and give a treat. But it's timing. Are those people getting the timing right? Are you as a teacher, or is your teacher checking that you're getting your timing right? It's very important, all these things. Otherwise, clicker training doesn't work. So you have to know that your trainer, or if you are a trainer, that you are getting this correct. You're getting your timing correct, or your trainer is checking that you're getting the timing correct, that you are not confusing your dog. Unfortunately, there are many people out there who believe that they have quickly done a course and I can do training. So I'm going to teach everybody who comes to my little training school clicker training. They haven't actually learned how to do clicker training properly themselves as a trainer, and now they're trying to train the people. This is why clicker training can be a disaster. It can be fabulous, it can be a disaster. So please watch very carefully where you go to learn clicker training. I think it's very important. Ask your trainer, have they done courses? Can they show you certificates? There's plenty of certificates around to say that you've done clicker training. I've got some behind me here. I've done several courses. I've also entered some videos and been checked on how my timing is and that. This is what is necessary with trainers. You can't just stand up and say, I'm a clicker trainer. You just click and treat. This is when it becomes a disaster. So if you're interested in doing clicker training, find yourself a good clicker training and have some fun. I can highly recommend it.